Well, hello everybody and welcome to the channel. This is David Bianco. So today it's a vinyl shootout. This is the second release in the pop rock area for Rhino in their High Fidelity series. It's Van Morrison's His Band and the Street Choir. Before I get into it though, what about the packaging? That was the biggest problem with the first release. Well, they certainly have improved it. They used an actual LP mailer. Now, probably the taping and security of it needs to be a little better because it was easy to just flip these sides and have them well opened on the side because there was no tape securing it on the sides. So a little room for improvement, but they definitely have it in the right box. So we're going to get to the vinyl shootout next here on the Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion. So the Rhino High Fidelity series is interesting in that the way they do it actually is they limit the production to 5,000 units. They only sell it on the rhino.com website or rhino.ca for Canada. You won't find it in stores. The other thing about it is when they announce it, it becomes available on the website and you can buy it that day. So none of this pre-order, pre-announcement, ooh la la, hoopla that you wait for years. I really give them a lot of credit in this regard because it's kind of like, here it is, you want it, buy it. And again, as Chad Kassem says, buy now, cry later, because the cars sold out, I think, sooner than a lot of people thought. Now, this one might not, and here's one of the reasons. This album has been reissued a lot, and it also has been cut by Kevin Gray. So why do this? That's one of the 500-pound elephants in the room. Has anybody ever seen a 500-pound elephant? Anyway, so, why redo this? Well, the selection of the title I cannot obviously give you any insight into. Maybe they know something about their sales figures that we don't, and I'm sure they do. But this is cut by Kevin Gray at Coherent Studios, his own studios, with his newest equipment that he has developed with tubes and enhancements. So this is unique in that way. But Kevin Gray cuts, you can go back, 2008. Mastered at RTI, cut at Acoustech, pressed at Optimal. Kevin Gray, 2015 on Warner Brothers. Mastered at RTI, cut at Acoustech, pressed at Optimal. And 2020, a turquoise version that came out, again, mastered at RTI, the cut at Acoustic Tech, pressed at Optimal. You can find copies of these out there. I saw one of this last one that's turquoise, factory sealed for $25, including shipping. Fine. So if you want a Kevin Gray cut, you want turquoise, you can grab that one. Ironically, that one was on my want list. And years ago, it was a lot more expensive. So I was surprised to see that it had come down to $25. But as there is more in the market, that's going to happen. Now with this latest cut, of course, we have this newest equipment being used. So it should sound different. And it does. But my comparison is only going to be to my original because I don't have any of the previous Kevin Gray cuts. So I will be interested to see someone who does such a shootout. So just a bit of background on this particular album. It was Van Morrison's fourth release, and it was titled His Band and the Street Choir. It was released in November 1970. Van originally really wanted this to be titled Virgo's Fool Street Choir, but Warner Brothers changed it, and they did it without his consent. So that's really an odd piece of history and some trivia there. He intended the LP actually when he was envisioning this and doing demos for it to be an a cappella with a small choir that he had put together behind him. Thus the name The Street Choir was used in there. But He didn't really like the formulation of the LP as it was going. They were inserting with a backing band that got into it then, and the original choir that he had selected in time turned out not to be the ones that was used. And in the end, in these more recent years, Van Morrison actually has considered this to be one of his poorer releases. Now, the silver lining here is that he actually did yield a big hit out of this. Actually, his top hit, the one that rose the most in the charts, and that is the lead track called Domino, which is his tribute to Fats Domino. Now, the single was released 1 month before the album in October of 1970, and it reached number 9 on the Billboard Top 100. Which just came above his previously highest charting single, Brown Eyed Girl, which reached number 10 in 1967. So on to the actual review of the record in terms of the new Rhino release. So for reviews, when I'm doing these, one of the things I do, and I don't necessarily suggest you do this, but I just take the record out of the sleeve. I clean it with a brush, but I don't clean it in my record cleaner. And I do this just because I want to see how it kind of comes naturally from the factory, to get that determination, to give you that feedback. And so I did notice some pops and ticks and things that were a little annoying when I started to play the record in a few places. So I cleaned it immediately after that, just after I got these first impressions of the noise level, so to speak, not of the vinyl's core, but of maybe some contaminants that got in there in the manufacturing process. So I cleaned the record afterward, and those pretty much dissipated at that point. So step one, clean your records. I always say clean them anyway, but just as kind of the proof of the pudding, in this case, it needed it. So the other thing I start to listen for immediately is I look at what is the noise floor, how loud is the vinyl, and get an impression of that. With 0 being awfully noisy, terribly noisy, can't play it, and 10 being dead silent. And so the Rhino I give an 8, and the original I give a 6. So definitely there was more noise with the original in the substrate of the vinyl, and that one was cleaned also. But it's an older version that I've had for a while as well. But you don't expect some of those older ones to have dead quiet vinyl unless they're a QX or they're, something that has virgin vinyl, a JVC super vinyl in the day, whatever was being used. But the point is, the Rhino yielded about an 8, so it wasn't dead silent, but it was decently silent or quiet, and the OG was a 6. So, got all the non-musical stuff out of the way. So the way I do this review is I listened to the Rhino first from beginning to end and made notes to basically get an impression, to get a reaction, to get a response to what I'm hearing. Now, this record, unlike some others I've reviewed, is not one I play very often, so familiarization is not as strong. So these are pretty raw impressions that I got of the record. So what I'm going to do is give you these feedbacks and just tell you the basic notes that I wrote, the impressions I got by song, starting with side 1, track 1 of Domino. Again, Domino was the hit off of here, his biggest charting hit to number 9, and it's one of my favorites. Matter of fact, it's one of the ways I got reintroduced to Van Morrison a bit after the Brown Eyed Girl days. This was in the early 70s and nearly the end of 1970 when this came out. I've got the Warner Brothers Green Label single that I bought as well. And this one on the Rhino, and everything I'm going to talk about now is about the Rhino. It really had a lot of punch. It had a very nice sound stage, which was present, and the spatiality was good. There was the things that were forward, like the voice needed to be, and there was just a really good balance. And I noticed the bass reached down further than I remembered it to be from the past. So I made note of that because there's a really nice bass line that follows it, especially as it gets toward to the end of that cold ending of this song. Next song was Crazy Face. I mean, there was a lot of precision on this one with the piano and the vocal, which is where it starts. And the smooth sax solo was really just something to behold. I really enjoyed that part of the song. I didn't remember it really a lot in this song, but it really was a smooth sound coming out of that sax. The third track, Give Me a Kiss. The vocals had just a certain airiness to them, and the horns almost had a little feeling of movement in them. The spatiality of them, I thought, was very interesting, and it really just kind of gave the song a little different aura than I recalled from the past. So that made a really nice impression on me. The next track I've been working. The surface knock on the drum hits, you could feel a little bit there, and that was interesting for me because I'm a drummer, and so those things when they happen, I could feel that the surface hits, and the horn section on this one was what I would call more encompassing, and so it just had that breath of airiness to it that really worked well on the song. The next was Call Me Up in Dreamland, which a lot of people know that as a track that was played on FM quite a bit in the 70s. And really what I noticed with that was the smoothness of the sound that's on this mastering kind of flows with the pace and the beat of the track. It's just, there was something just about the way it flowed and the way the smoothness of the sound was. It just like like water in a river almost. It was just, that was an interesting, because I noticed it early and then nothing took away from it. None of the instrumentation or anything they kind of stayed together in that kind of flow. And it really made the song, feel as something that was constructed together, as if the way it was recorded was very tightly integrated with the meaning of the song and the writing of the song, and then this mastering of it just really, I think, punctuated that. And the last track on the first side, I'll Be Your Lover 2, T-O-O, I'll Be Your Lover 2, or also. That's a really generous title, isn't it? The acoustic guitar airiness and the blending of that with the vocal echoes was just a little bit taunting. I was just, wow, that's really a impression that I never really got when I remember this song. So I did get a lot of reflection that, hey, yeah, I didn't know this album as well as I thought I did. But some of what I was, I guess, feeling from this was probably partly based in the way it was mastered. And the feel of the drum whisks on the snare mid-song, you could, you really, it was something that really had a little bit of dimensionality to it, which it just wasn't kind of pushed off in the back. It had a little more of a feel to it. All right, then flipped it over and started with Blue Money. And Blue Money is just kind of a raucous little song, and the vocals were there, and nothing jumped out as especially unique about it as compared to some of these others. So I really didn't have a lot of comments on it in that regard. It sounded great, but it just really didn't have things that were as distinct in it to me. The next one, Virgo Clowns, and as we recall, I said earlier, he wanted this album to have the word Virgo in it, the Virgo band, but that wasn't the way it got titled. So maybe that was the connection that Van was making to this song to the original title, which means this song probably had more meaning than we recognized, to him at least. And the feel of the acoustic guitar strings was very present here. It really stood out. And you could feel mid-song, there's an area where the acoustic guitar, the strings are plucked. and you got that feel of the plucking of the string and a bit of even almost a feel of vibration there. So that was very accurate, very it was just very interesting. I went back afterward and played that one again because it was just so impressionable from an acoustic guitar standpoint. And then Gypsy Queen, it starts with like that little high-pitched jewelry box kind of song in there. And it was kind of very impactful because it kind of reached out a bit, and it had a little bit of dimensionality to it. And the echoes in the vocals also had that presence and depth as well that brought it all through this song, which is one of my favorite songs on the record, actually. And then Sweet Jenny, which I think was the flip of Domino, if I'm not mistaken, on the 45. It had some real strong echo reverb of the rhythm that was very spatial to me. So it had a little more, because I remember the song more from playing the B-side, which of course probably was compressed and, what they do on 45s. So it had that nice reverb and spatiality to it, which was enjoyable. And next to the last song, If I Ever Needed Someone, the choir was more forward and present, I think, on this one than and that really felt good because it felt meaningful to the title of the song and to the message of the song that choir was wrapped around a bit to kind of almost embrace the listener in this. And then the last track, Street Choir, the layering of the horns in the soundstage was very joyous. It really felt like, and again, last song on the record and all, and it really just felt like that layering was very determinative. It was there for a reason, and it really stood out to me in this recording. And the harmonica in here kind of had a little bit of almost movement to the sound a bit, which is a little different because the harmonica sound usually is just a very pointed type sound. So I found that very interesting. So I think, with this mastering, Kevin's got this new equipment that he's using at his Coherent Studios with tubes. And, I'm thinking that just some of that capability just gives a little bit of breath and life to this. So, when I compared this to the OG, which is a very decently recorded and pressed record, a little noisier, as I said, it's no slouch, but it didn't have some of these characteristics. It didn't quite have the same levels of what I would call almost 3D spatiality that this felt like. There were some areas where the original sounded like it was a bit excessive with some of the vocals. And here on this one, I think it was a little more precise without that excess on those areas where the vocals were maybe pushed up or pushed forward a little bit too much in this. And it was, the smoothness that was there without neutering anything was something that I think overall the Rhino had that the OG really didn't have that feel. It sounded good. It had good representation of instruments, and there was definitely levels of precision. But, if I say which one am I going to keep and play, it's definitely going to be the Rhino. I think you really hit it out of the park from giving this thing more. Now, is that more than he got before when he mastered it in the previous years? I don't have that to check, but I would bet that it is because I think this new equipment just gives it that. I mean, in a similar way, with obviously very different kind of music on the Cars. It was just that kind of experience. Things just opened up and really had some spatiality to it, and really, that was really kind of the big impact to take back. And I think in this one, you have a similar experience. But as I said, the one song that really struck me here was that the Call Me Up in Dreamland, the smoothness of the sound and the way it sounds from this particular pressing and master, it just kind of has a certain flow that it feels with the track and the pace and the beat of the music that just was engaging to really like the song was new in that regard. On the original, it was like it was a song with instruments, which is fine, but obviously they all are. But this one really it was almost like you were sitting in a boat, and it was flowing down a river, and it was almost like the words were being written to the song as you were flowing down the river, and the musicians were in the boat and moving with you, and it was just just had that kind of feel to it, which was just. It's just a little unique. Well, that's how it sounded on my system, and that's how that song, "Call Me Up in Dreamland," sounded to my ears. And that song was, again, as I said, never a big special song to me at all. But now it's kind of like that. I really liked listening to it multiple times and got that same feeling to it. Frankly, after I played the OG against it and went back and forth, it was like, yeah, I got to listen to it on its own again, because it really still had that feel to it. So it's kind of interesting to, get different human emotive impressions out of a pressing or out of a mastering in this case. And I think that really speaks to, the value of something like this happening. I mean, the fact that this has been done before, yeah, that's true. This was readily available, and for me, something that I wanted to review for the channel and take a listen to. But I'll definitely be selling my original, because this one's the one that I want to keep. And so if you don't have it, it's a good investment. You can get the others for $25, $30, as I said, that were done previously, and I can't speak to them. But this one definitely, for me, gets an A+. It really is a wonderful sounding album, and I think that what's been done with it by Kevin again has raised the bar. And that's what you're looking for when you're especially buying something that you already have. So I hope this was helpful. It was fun to do. And I ask you, as always, if you haven't subscribed, please do that by ringing the bell. Tell your friends, share with them as well. And if you have any comments or a like that you want to do, please do that as well. I always like to hear what your impressions are, because I like to give you feedback and it keeps us engaged. So until next time, thanks for watching again, and we'll catch you next time on our next Safe and Sound Texas audio excursion. Take care, everybody.